Travel YouTubers are some of the most viewed people on the platform due to their ability to transport you to a completely different part of the world and engross you in a culture and way of life you didn't even know existed. However, some YouTubers take this idea to the complete extreme and insert themselves in some of the most dangerous situations on earth, risking both their lives and their freedom. So today, we're going to be looking at some of the most dangerous journeys ever completed by YouTubers. But first, if you didn't know, I make weekly documentary videos here on this channel, and I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel so we can keep this YouTube dream alive. But if YouTube wasn't enough, my videos are also now available on Spotify, so make sure to go check out all of my videos over there. Anyway, back to the video. In November 2023, British YouTuber Bald and Bankrupt, aka Benjamin Rich, released a video titled "I Was Trafficked Through the World's Deadliest Jungle," which saw him and fellow YouTuber Timmy Carter traversing the notorious Darrien Gap. If you're unaware, the Darrien Gap is an inhospitable stretch of jungle that separates South America and Central America. Over the last few years, this has increasingly become a route for migrants from all over the world to reach the United States. Every day, thousands of people start a journey unsure they will even finish in the hopes of reaching a better life in America, dodging disease, robbery by the cartel, injury, or something worse. Now, this place is regarded as one of the most dangerous places in the world. However, for Bald, this was a lifelong curiosity and made it an irresistible adventure to document. His journey began in the city of Medellin, Colombia, where he would then find a bus to take a 14-hour drive up to the northern town of Necoli. Before Ben even got on the bus, he noticed the station was filled with people looking to make the journey across the Darien, even bumping into someone who'd just been deported from Canada and was looking to make the crossing for a third time. It was during this conversation that Ben was told that he should speak and pretend that he was Russian.
So the man's also saying, I have to say I'm Russian. Yeah, it's starting to dawn on me, if it didn't already, that what we're doing is really, really dangerous. The most dangerous thing I've ever done. Definitely for YouTube, probably in my life.
Once he arrived in Necoli, Ben was told not to tell anyone that he was a foreigner and to simply avoid talking altogether due to his lack of Spanish. If anyone was to speak to him, his cover was to pretend that he was Russian, escaping the war. This was mainly due to kidnapping fears. If the cartel or even the locals knew that a British and a Greek man, two people with strong passports, were there, they would make the perfect candidates to be held for ransom. So it was imperative that they had a believable story. After spending the night on the streets, Ben bought some supplies like a tent and some gloves to minimize the dangers of the jungle. But this was also dangerous. They had to walk the line between having enough supplies, but not so much that other people would want to rob them. When walking past the Samaritan shelter, he also noted how he was one of the lucky ones to even have supplies, as a lot of people make the crossing with literally nothing. Once he arrived at the beach, he was met by hundreds of migrants who were all looking to cross the delta to the start of the Darrien jungle.
You can see in the distance is the Darrien jungle. Have a look over there. My camera doesn't zoom in, but you can see the steam rising off those tropical mountains. That is the Darrien. The most famous, I should say, the most dangerous jungle in the world. Nothing in there. Once we go into the Darrien, we're on our own. And we're at the mercy of the people who are going to take us across.
Once the delta had been crossed, Bald arrived in Capurunga, the very north coast of Colombia. The next day, he reported that he'd finally found some people smugglers who'd be willing to take him into the jungle. The guide Bald found then took him to two men on a boat who instructed him to put on a paper bracelet. This paper bracelet would essentially be the difference between life and death in the jungle.
This bracelet is so we can join the other caminantes and be protected by the cartel. If we went through without this bracelet, there's no chance of getting through. So this is what we're paying for, protection from the cartel by having this bracelet.
This boat took Bald further up the coast to the mouth of the jungle, where he would apparently be greeted by an indigenous man named Juan Lopez. However, as soon as they entered the jungle, his group were caught by the Panamanian army and then escorted back to Colombia. The next day, Bald found another person in the village who would take him on a different route that may avoid detection from authorities, but was much longer and much more dangerous. After another day of anxiously waiting, members of the Gulf cartel drove them deep into the forest on a motorbike to their camp, where they would then begin their hike across the Darien.
Hundreds of us heading to America. Every step we take into the Darien is one step further away from the safety of Colombia, deeper into the territory of the Gulf cartel.
For the next 5 days, Ben's only guide through the jungle was blue plastic bags wrapped around trees dotted every couple hundred meters. That would signify the way, but many were just not there, leaving people having to guess the next move. However, when they arrived at the stopping point, Ball reported that Timmy was nervous, and for good reason.
Timmy's a little bit more nervous than me in this. He's getting a bit more stressed, but the reason for that is he understands what people are saying about us. My Spanish isn't that good. So when the guys are asking questions and saying like, why do you think those Russians are here? Why do you think those Russians didn't fly directly to Mexico or something? Like, he hears all that stuff. I'm oblivious to it, so I'm kind of like taking it kind of blasé. But yeah, it is definitely dangerous being here. We're in the middle of nowhere. There's no laws. We're at the mercy of the cartel guides behind me in the camp. I've been told to stop filming numerous times, which is making me really nervous to get the camera out, which is why I've come some distance from the camp.
After some more walking, he finally reached the frontiera, aka the end point from the protection from the cartel and the starting point of the deep jungle, leaving them on their own. Within a short distance, Ben was hit with the realities of the dangers when he came across a body. With only one option but to march on, Ben witnessed families with babies traversing the difficult terrain and had multiple close calls just 2 days into his journey. With a night spent in a flowing river contaminated by human waste and rubbish, Ben and Timmy would have to climb up and down a mountain and then follow the powerful river all the way downstream. Once at the camp spot, Ben quickly faced the realities of not reaching the final destination that day. They both had very minimal water, no food, and would have to face a 5th day traversing the jungle.
I just saw one of the most distressing sights that I've seen on this trip through the Darrien, and believe me, I've seen some distressing things, some things that will never leave me. But I just saw a family, a mum and dad and a baby, Venezuelans begging for food from passing caminantes, but no one's got any food for them. I've got nothing for myself. Didn't eat last night, barely ate yesterday, 1 tin of tuna, and so yeah, I don't know if anyone's going to stop and try and help them, but probably not. People have to look after themselves. It's difficult to have compassion here in the Darrien for other people, and that sounds brutal and harsh when you're sitting at home watching this video on the internet in America, in your comfy homes in England, wherever you are. But when you're here and it's a matter of life or death, yeah, that's the reality of it.
As Bald continued to walk that day, he finally came across a village and a civilization for the first time in 5 days. This village is where many of the refugees go to get aid and processed by the Red Cross and the Panamanian authorities. However, going through this process ultimately resulted in Bald getting detained.
Well, very naively, myself and Timmy thought that once we got to Panama and we spoke to immigration, they'd just kind of say, oh, you silly boys, here's a stamp in your passport, continue on your journey to America. But it didn't work out like that. We've spent the last few days in an immigration camp, unable to leave, waiting to be kicked out of the country. It's been bloody awful, but let me give you a tour of what is now my home here somewhere in deepest Panama.
After 7 days detained in the refugee camp with horrendous conditions, Bald was finally able to leave and take a bus to Costa Rica. Now, when this video was uploaded, it was the first time the Darrien had been documented on YouTube, and maybe ever, with this level of footage. I think this series should be nominated and win some kind of award for documentary/journalism reporting. This is really world class. Nobody on YouTube is doing this shit. Props, Ball. This was amazing start to finish. Not even the biggest news company ever dared to do this. Huge respect. As controversial as Bald and Bankrupt is to some on the internet, you have to hold your hands up and admit that this video is an incredible piece of journalism. Literally no one on YouTube is doing this. Both Ben and Timmy risked their lives to expose the realities of what these migrants have to go through in search of a better life. A month after the Darrien Gap video was posted, Bald posted another video titled "We Survived Being Trafficked by the Cartel, Others Didn't," in which Bald and Timmy recount their journey.
People think that the cartel is the most dangerous part of the Darrien Gap. It's not. The most dangerous part of the Darrien Gap is when the cartel leave you and now you're alone, because the dangerous people in the Darrien Gap are the indigenous people, the people who live in the jungle, because they see these thousands of people passing through each year, and it's like, okay, we know these people have money, we know these people have phones, we know these people have passports, let's rob them. Let's do other horrible things to these people, because if you don't give them what they want, and we heard these stories so many times, backgrounds, people from our group as well. They can kill you. To women, they do horrific assaults. I don't even want to go into what we heard in the camp. They'll do terrible things to you if you don't give them what you want. Kidnapping. That was one of the major fears that we had. Once the cartel leave you, many people were kidnapped and held for ransom, had to sell their houses, had to sell their businesses back in Venezuela, back in other countries to pay them. Yeah, the cartel are the least scary part of being in the Darien for sure.
The next journey undertaken by YouTubers is honestly one of the most unhinged and insane things I've ever seen on the platform. In September 2021, YouTube channel Sun travelled to the depths of a Chernobyl reactor in an inflatable raft. Now, if you don't know, and you've been living under a radioactive rock for your entire life, Chernobyl was the site of the worst nuclear disaster in history. When reactor number 4 exploded in 1986, it released a radioactive cloud so devastating that the entire area will apparently be uninhabitable for thousands of years. Today, Chernobyl obviously isn't entirely safe, but you can do short guided tours in safe zones that apparently leave you with radiation levels similar to an X-ray. However, saying that, there are still many hotspots that are extremely contaminated. Places like the Red Forest, the Machine Cemetery, and of course, reactor number 4 can all be deadly. Their plan to explore Chernobyl was to first make their way to Turbine Hall of the 6th Unfinished Power Unit, where they traversed through rusted and contaminated tunnels. When they got to the pond that had formed next to a fallen crane, the Geiger counter reached a reading of 460 to 500. But when they got onto the water in their inflatable rafts, it was only 150 because water can shield radiation. But that is still a really high reading considering. After some floating about, they discovered that there wasn't any way back into the 4th tower unit and headed back to where they started. However, one of the loose cannons in the group took a chainsaw to the inflatable rafts and led to one of the members having to swim their way back to safety in the radioactive water.
How do you like the radioactive water? Is it cold?
We are in a positive mood. We are friends, so everything is fine.
When the guy actually got out of the water, the readings on his clothing were reaching 300, which is honestly just insane, but not really that surprising. After spending over 12 hours at the site, some of the members started to feel tired and a bit ill, and they decided to head home. Just imagine some scientists working at Chernobyl seeing a bunch of guys in inflatable boats, a ukulele and a chainsaw messing around in a radioactive pond. At first, I was quite skeptical whether this is really Chernobyl, but looking at satellite images and Google Map pictures, I realised this is actually only 1.5 kilometers away from the destroyed reactor number 4. Those guys are crazy. A few days later, on the 19th of September, Cryoson posted another video of them going to the hospital to test the radiation levels in their bodies. After doing some tests, it was revealed that they were mostly clean and had minimal radiation, with the highest being a reading of 590, which was apparently a negligible indicator of radiation. However, after finding out that one of them had fallen into radioactive water near reactor number 4, they went in for further imaging, where the little bloke then had to lie down for 5 to 10 minutes. But even after this test, it showed minimal signs of gamma radiation, basically meaning that all of them were clean, but were heavily suggested to go get blood tests. To be honest, these guys looked like they were affected by radiation before their visit to Chernobyl. To be fair, if you look at their other videos on their channel, they really don't seem to care about radiation, having returned to Chernobyl to go scuba diving, built an X-ray gun, and various other weird projects. One of the craziest adventures ever documented on the platform came from endurance athlete Russ Cook, better known online as the hardest Geeza. In April 2023, Russ set out to become the first person to run the entire length of Africa, despite many believing it to be physically and logistically impossible. The journey would span over 16,000 kilometers, cut through more than a dozen countries, and take nearly a year to complete. However, as you would expect, Russ would encounter some of the most dangerous places you could imagine yourself in when running through some of the most rural and politically unstable areas on Earth. On the 24th of June 2023, just 64 days into the attempt, Russ and his support crew were robbed at gunpoint in Angola for their cameras, money, and passports containing visas for many of the countries they hoped to cross. They lost a few £1,000s worth of equipment, and it was a massive kick in the balls. At the time, Russ reported to the BBC, "One of the reasons I wanted to run the length of Africa is because no one had ever done it, and now we're finding out why." Luckily, no one was injured or hurt, but after hearing their story, Russ and the crew were given a police escort for the remainder of their journey through Angola. But saying that, Russ would be met with another life-threatening situation just a few weeks later on day 102 when running through a rural area of the Congo. The day began like any other, clocking in for a shift of 1s and 2s, but somewhere along the way he became separated from his team and the support vehicle.
It was very emotional, to be honest. basically I thought I was going to die on a couple of occasions that day, and it was mad. I'll try and set the scene a bit. Like DRC, as soon as we bowled up there, I think we was all a bit anxious about the whole situation. Like, it's one of the poorest countries in the world, and the locals, in my experience anyway, very subjective experience, but they were like quite hostile. People were shouting at us, officials were trying to get money out of us from the get-go, and it kind of created this thing where it's like, whoa, like we are up against it a little bit here. And then day 2, a guy came up to me with a big rock that had a load of spikes in it and was like, I'm gonna lob this over your head if you don't give me £3. And I gave him £1. I was like, I'm not about to fight you over £3, but also I don't want to look like I'm giving you too much. And then I woke up, I was going to run 100k because we'd hit 100k on YouTube. I said that I'd run 100k, and then basically lost the boys because the van couldn't go down this road. It was like no tarmac, all these mud paths. Got separated from them. They tried to kind of like rearrange a meeting point with me. Signal died out, ran out of water, ran out of food, ran into this village. I kind of tried to keep my head down and just get through, because I was already like quite scatty at this point. I was quite on edge with the whole situation, and the locals weren't very happy with me. They ended up trying to get money out of me, and then walked me out into the bush, 2 guys with machete.
Jesus.
I was shitting myself bad. And then like basically emptied my bag, had nothing but biscuits, gave my biscuits, legged it. There was all kind of like commotion running through the jungle, and then 2 guys on a motorbike came. They said like they were trying to communicate to me, but it was their Lingala and I'm speaking English. I have no idea what they're saying. They kind of tried to communicate. They were going to take me to my friends. I was like, oh, don't know if this is true. Like, this is normally the boys would send a note when they were sending people for me. They had no notes or anything, and I was like, but I'd ran like 50 something K. I had no water. I was really dehydrated. I was really hungry. My phone had no signal. I was like, kind of not got a choice. I was like, it's either this or I'm like camping in the jungle overnight. And I was like, oh, that's probably not a good idea either. So went with them. I was like, if I'm not back with the boys in like half an hour, then I know it's bad news. And then I ended up being on the motorbike for 7 hours. Yeah, ended up in this rural village. It was middle of the night. Got took to this little wooden hut. Bunch of men were arguing about how much money I owed them. And then the second chief of the village spoke a few words in English. I managed to kind of say to him like, look, if you call my mate, they can come over, we'll get the money, it's all going to be all right. Then they kind of spoke, we got it arranged, but the boys had such a hard time getting to me because we're 7 hours in the jungle, there's no tarmac, pure jungle stuff. So yeah, like eventually the boys got to me, we squared everything away, it was all right. Yeah, it was rough, man.
For the entire journey, Russ would face constant injuries, multiple bouts of food poisoning, visa complications and health issues. Most notably, just 50 odd days in, when he started urinating blood and protein for no clear cause, forcing him to sit on the sidelines for a couple days until it was confirmed the issues weren't serious. In early 2024, after nearly a year on the road, Russ finally reached the northernmost point of Africa, in Tunisia on the Mediterranean coast. After completing the challenge, the claim that Russ was the first to run the full length of Africa was actually disputed by the World Runners Association because of the different route choices and other semantics. But they did concede that Russ was the first to run from the southernmost point to the northernmost point. But I personally think the most impressive thing about this journey is that Russ started this whole thing out of his own pocket and had very minimal sponsorship, barely any following, and not much of a content strategy either. But with blind faith, a dream, and putting in those 1s and 2s, he completed his greatest ever journey. Another YouTuber who just so happened to find his way into a dangerous and life-changing journey came from British tourist Harry, aka We Hate the Coal. Harry was documenting his journey, driving his motorbike from Thailand all the way back to the UK. Along the way, he arrived in Kathmandu, Nepal, with the intention of shipping his bike to Dubai to continue his journey. However, Harry was completely unaware of the bubbling political unrest going on in the country at the time. You see, in September 2025, Gen Z protests began as a fuck you to the long-standing corruption and inequality, along with the government aiming to put a ban on all social media platforms. So what was meant to be basically a tourist trip quickly turned into him documenting the political unrest unfolding before his eyes.
For some reason, let's go see what's going on.
Why are we running this way?
Actually, one man throws a stone in the middle of the nowhere, so that's why.
Oh shit, look at them pushing that over there. More gunshots in the air. Oh shit, he's just put off some tear gas over this way.
Bollocks. Oh, that fucking really gets in your eyes. Oh, shit, man. Fucking hell. Yeah. Fuck me, dude. Gets in the back of your throat, in your eyes. It burns the forehead.
and it smells like wasabi or mustard. Thank you so much. And this is what I mean about the humanity. The humanity still remains even though there's chaos. That way. There's blown up stuff, they're ripping off the railings, but still, you have people sharing water, laughing, helping each other out.
As the protests progressed, Harry followed the waves of crowds towards the Parliament building where further chaos erupted, burning buildings, smashed government vehicles, and the local people expressing their frustrations.
The whole building is burned through!
Underneath the video, Harry commented, "Not a journalist, just an idiot with a camera and maybe some courage. I got stuck here riding my moped from Thailand to the UK. We'll continue journey after curfews finish. Bro didn't choose journalism, journalism chose him. Slept as a tourist, woke up as a reporter. You could be stumbling through the deepest depths of hell and still find a British tourist just hanging out." The video today has over 32 million views in just 3 months, and was one of the best and most on-the-ground documentations of Nepal's political overthrow. This video alone gained Harry hundreds of thousands of subscribers overnight, and reached pretty much every major news outlet. If there's one thing this video proves, it's that the line between travel, YouTube and journalism is basically non-existent at this point. The real on-the-ground investigations and reporting come from normal people just living their lives, and not corporations that have to abide by their agendas. Whether it's trekking through cartel-controlled jungle, floating around inside a nuclear exclusion zone, or accidentally documenting a revolution, none of these creators set out knowing exactly how bad things would get, but when they were confronted with danger, they didn't turn off their camera. Anyway, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching this video, it really does mean a lot to me. If you want to listen to all of my videos on the go, all of my videos are now available on Spotify, so make sure to go follow me over there, along with my Instagram @FatMemer. And while you're here, like this video, subscribe, and comment below what you want to see next. As always, I'll see you in the next one.